Hey everybody, Chris here. Thanks for being with me for this devotion time. The theme for today is going to be about generosity. And particularly what I've been thinking about regarding generosity as a theme has been, how do I be generous with my time? As a pretty busy person myself, with young ones at the house, school years going, ministries kicking, and there's just a lot of things I feel like it's a busy season of life to be in. Perhaps you feel similarly. How does one, in their busyness, still be generous with their time? Or is it just always spoken for? And that's something that I was just thinking about as I was preparing for our time together. How are you generous with your time? Or maybe you're just not. Maybe you're unable to be generous with your time. For our passage today, we're going to jump into the Gospel of Mark, the first chapter, and we're going to hear a little bit from Jesus here. Here it is, Mark 1, verses 35 through 39. Listen for the word. It says, "Very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went to a solitary place where he prayed. Simon, or Peter, and his companions went to look for Jesus. And when they found him, they exclaimed, 'Everyone's looking for you.' And Jesus replied, 'Let us go somewhere else, to the nearby villages, so I can preach there also. That is why I have come.' So he traveled throughout Galilee, preaching in their synagogues and driving out demons." What I was really captivated by with this verse is Jesus is an actually very busy person in Scripture. If you read the Gospels, the life and teachings of Jesus, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, if you're new to the Bible, that's where you can read about Jesus' life and teachings, really. You'll learn that he is being pulled so many different directions, like all of the time, particularly in his ministry calling, right? So he's healing lepers, he's preaching in synagogues, he's meeting with friends, he's dining at dinner tables. Like he's just like constantly being asked to be on people's schedules. And I found that to be actually really interesting. So what can we learn from Jesus? Because I think within all of his busyness, Jesus is incredibly generous with his time. He's incredibly generous with his time. He's constantly sort of trying to find opportunities to connect with people. But there's two things that sort of stuck out to me from this Mark passage that I want to share with us today. And the first thing that I want to share with us today is that Jesus is generous with his time because he starts being generous with his time with God. It says in the very beginning of this passage, in early morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, and what did he do? He left the house and went off to a solitary place to pray. And the reason why this is important is because for Jesus, and really for our Christian faith too, it's in those moments where Jesus is catching his breath. Jesus is able to sort of slow down and sort of reconnect and catch his breath from being pulled and having a day ahead of him of so many to-dos and so many people that will be requiring his attention. He just needs to be generous with his time first with God, who fills his cup, right? We love out of the overflow of love that God gives to us to share with others. So there's that. That's the first thing of how Jesus is generous with his time. He's generous with his time first with God. And then lastly, the point I want to share, I got flies around me. The last point I want to share with you is Jesus is generous with his time because he knows when to say yes to commitments and he knows when to say no. To say that differently, Jesus is able to identify, I think, in scriptures really well, what is something that is really, really important and what is maybe just an urgent matter. He's saying yes to the things that are very important to him. Let's go and preach in the synagogues. That's why I've come. That is my ministry. He says that in Mark 1 for our verse. I have come to preach in the synagogues and drive out the demons in this case, right? But for lesser asks, he's saying no. They're perhaps maybe just more urgent and less important for his call. He has this clear distinction of what he's able to say yes to, what he's able to say no to, and he opens himself up then with his time, being generous with his time, knowing what he's able to say yes and no to. When you say yes to something, you're saying no to 1,000 other things anyway, right? I'm preaching to the choir, but I just want to have that be reiterated for our time together. Friends, how are you able to be generous with your time in the season of life that you found yourself in? Do you need to be more generous with your time with your partner, with your spouse, with your loved ones, with your family, with your friends, with your neighbor, your coworkers? Do you need to be more generous with your time? How can you be more generous with your time? Or maybe you're just at capacity and you need to pull back and you need to spend some time with God and catch your breath and be cared for. And you can do that in a number of ways. Maybe it's reading scripture. Maybe it's just having a time of meditation and prayer to catch your breath. But just going away and being with God, be ministered to by God, so that you might be able to then go out into the world with the love that God gives you to love others with all of your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Friends, that's it. Be generous with your time. That's our challenge and our invitation for today. You are the beloveds of Jesus Christ, and you are so loved by this community at LOPC. Thanks for joining me here. If you'd like to engage with me, drop down on social media in the comment section. Would love to hear from you, or you can email me, chris@lopc.org. See you soon. Bye.